Baja Blast is
It's
the best flavor, but it's
You're grading this class? Oh.
I never tried it. Dude. Oh wait, the 7th topic.
He was like,
It's
I don't know,
hot.
I told him, he was like, he's only 19, how did he even get alcohol? I'm like, are you kidding me?
Like, really? You're that naive, Dad?
Last period we were talking about how bath salts make people eat each other's face.
Hey, what do you have for treat?
Miss Smith.
It's okay, I have this coffee and she about blew up on me today.
For what?
Because I made a little small joke in the middle of our project and she just skipped over us.
Were you late to
No.
class?
All right,
Never
let's
again.
pull up some data files that we're gonna need today.
Okay, guys.
So move on.
How about we start class?
All right, we are going to open up first the file FL2_1. You might as well just leave the Moodle page open. It just depends on how far along we get here today on whether there'll be other files that we'll need to come and grab to use in Flash as well. So we know we need to start with that one. Okay, after chapter 1, and just so everyone knows, I do have both your skills review and your project builder graded and posted. Chapter 1 basically was just trying to get you used to the tools available to you and how to work the timeline. Something that I noticed as I was grading, just kind of a heads up here, a lot of you, especially on Project Builder, well, most of you did Project Builder 2, I do believe. There was like 5 different layers, 6 different layers, okay, and very few people actually named their layers. Most of them was layer 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so forth. Okay. Now, my little disclaimer always is, okay, it's fine if you don't name your layers. Okay, but when it gets to these big projects that you want my help on, and then I'm supposed to just jump in after you've worked 2 days on a Flash animation and you don't have anything named, and I'm supposed to figure out what's where, I usually sit down and look at that and go, oh, looks like you're going to figure it out yourself, okay? So I would really get yourselves into the habit of naming your layer, okay, according to whatever it is that you're doing. If you, this chapter 2's about how to draw objects and use graphics in Flash. So if you're drawing a blue circle, I'd call the layer blue circle. If you are creating a red rectangle, I would call it red rectangle. I mean, it doesn't have to be elaborate here, but I'm telling you guys, when we get into some of these that are very large Flash files where you're going to have a lot of different layers, okay, it's going to be confusing for you after a while, after you get so many layers. You're going to spend too much time going back and trying to figure out what layer it was that you did some sort of animation on, or you did a stop action on, and that sort of thing. So I would get myself into the habit of naming those layers, okay, just because later on you will really appreciate the fact that you did that. Later on?
You said later on.
Later on.
Very punny.
Very punny. All right, once you download FL2_1, let's go ahead and open that up in Flash. Mine's taking a while to think about it.
Tell them not to think about it.
I know.
You just gotta do it. Yeah. You shouldn't think about it too much. Think about it too much, buddy. Yeah, you just think about it too much. Come on, buddy. Come on, buddy. Come on, buddy.
All right. So there's not really a lot going on here. The reason why they want us to open this up is because they wanted a specific workspace size. I mean, we could have set that up and created it ourselves. But we're going to take this and we're going to begin by just utilizing some basic drawing tools, and then we'll work our way into using graphics. Okay. Just kind of waiting here till everybody gets caught up.
What? Wait, why are you waiting on me? It's a joke. That was not a funny joke, okay?
Doggy.
All right, if you want to zoom in, okay, on your workspace area, that is fine. And something else that we can do, and a lot of times people like this when you're drawing objects, other people do not. So I'm going to show you how to pull up the grid on here. You can use it, okay, if you like it. Some people, it's just way too many lines, hurts their eyes, so you can just figure that out yourself. But if we go to View, and we go to Grid, and we select Show Grid, obviously we get a grid on here. Okay, so this comes in very useful, especially if you're drawing objects and you're trying to like have symmetry on both sides, or in the example that we're going to be doing here, you know, spacing. Okay, if you need to count the boxes over or down so that you align things appropriately, a lot of people like to use the grid for that purpose. Okay, so that's the grid, how to use it. It's completely up to you on whether you want to use that or not. Okay, so let's take a look at page 2-9 in our book. That's where we're going to pick up today.
I want to try to draw Cameron's sister.
All right, I don't care what color that you decide to use for your shapes, but make sure that you have a fill color and you also have a stroke color as well, okay, to go along with that. So let's go ahead, draw in the shapes that they've shown you there on page 2-9. See, this is coming in useful because I can look at, if I need to draw in a specific size, I can count how many squares I am over and down.
Cameron, I drew your sister. Wow, that looks really good. Looks exactly like her. Well, that's an animator. My sister.
I'm not gonna lie to you. Stop.
Please stop. Don't do that.
Same thing.
Okay. You guys need to focus on what you're doing. Stop talking about Cameron's sister.
She's really something.
Duffy, I thought you had a girlfriend.
You should see Cameron's sister, though.
Is that your girlfriend?
Yeah, like half of it.
We don't want to know, especially since Mrs. Fox is recording this.
Are you gonna turn into the office?
Oh, my sister takes my design next year. You sure with that?
You know what Duffy said about you?
I don't think you know how mean I can be.
No, I know.
Oh, you have no concept. Well, far from as mean as I can be. That's for sure.
Wow. Colin, how's the opening day of the server go this weekend?
Opening day.
Wow.
I'm making these perfect. Do they have to be perfect?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
You're so mean.
They don't have to be perfect, Duffy.
I'm like going
But I
back to the-
appreciate the fact that you're trying to make them perfect.
Yeah, at least he's
I
trying.
do.
He's
I
saying-
appreciate
How
that.
close do both of these ones look?
I truly appreciate it.
Look at that.
Nice.
That's good, Nick.
Why, thank you.
Do you want to cook? Why, thank you.
Right, the line tool is underneath the text tool.
Shoot.
You like my rectangle?
I forgot about
style?
something.
Put the American flag. Pick that still color on it.
I don't know why this is taking forever. I got mine done.
Quinn. Bro, I had a whole box of cookies in my car.
Like Girl Scout cookies or
No, like just regular cookies, and it's like a massive box. And I let Jose drive it to Blue River, so he's probably gonna eat them all.
yeah, because Jose's fat.
Yeah, those are gonna be gone.
Jose's big.
He's so fat.
Oh, Jose.
What page are you on?
What does that matter?
Your book doesn't look like mine.
It doesn't matter,
Maybe
Cameron.
you're on the wrong page.
Maybe I am.
Yeah,
Is
I'm
there a
on
page you're
I'm
on?
on the one
That's
that
right.
told me to go to.
2-9.
2-9.
What page are you on, Cameron?
Sorry, he's just
I'm on 2-9.
Duffy.
All right, after we get these drawn in, let's go ahead and save this as tools.
You know I keep that tool
All right, let's talk about the layer here because at this point, I did not create a layer for each individual shape. And this is something that, well, you guys are going to have to get kind of good at planning whenever you're dealing with Flash. But you need to decide whether or not each shape needs to be on its own layer or if you are putting all of your shapes on one layer. Now, what's the difference between the two?
Oh no.
So if I wanted, let's say I wanted to animate, okay, or create a motion tween for each one of these shapes, which one do you think would be better? To have them all on one layer or to have them on individual layers?
Individual layers.
Very good, yes. If I wanted to do something specific to each one of these shapes, I'd want them on their own layer. Yeah, Duffy?
This shape, I went to go move it to where it's supposed to be, and I left it like an outline, kind of like when you pick up a coffee mug. And
Right, that's because anytime, great analogy by the way, That's because whenever you select these, you can't just hit the arrow tool and drag. Remember, you have to hit the selection tool and like draw a box around it so it selects everything. And then when you go to move it, then it'll move the stroke and the fill of the shape. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so back to instances where I would want to create each shape on its own individual layer. If I was doing something to each of these shapes as far as animating them, okay, I would want to put each of these on its own separate layer and name those individual layers, okay, because I'm assigning a different action to each of them. Okay, in this example, let's say that I want all of these shapes to appear in my animation at the same time. Okay, maybe I'm giving examples of here's some drawing tools, boom, and it shows up here. Okay, so that's when it's okay to have it on one layer. So you're going to have to get good at determining when you will want to put things on individual layers and when you will be okay by, you know, adding a couple of different things, 10 different things onto one layer. All right, let's move on. On page 2-10, let's see, we just did the line and the shape tool. Let's talk about using the pen, the pencil, and the brush tool. I really don't have a lot of space here, so I'm going to insert in a new layer. So I'm just going to go up to Insert Timeline and Layer, or you can hit the Layer button down in the bottom corner of the timeline. Either one will work. Now, Layer 1, I'm going to go ahead and name this Shapes, okay? And Layer 2, I'm going to name Pen and Brush. I'm just going to call it Pen Brush. Okay, I already have shapes occupying frame number 1. So if I started drawing right now, okay, by using my brush, my pencil, or my pen tool, it would be like as if I'm drawing on top of what I already have here. But I want a new workspace. So I'm actually on the pen brush layer. I'm going to come out to frame number 5. Because I want something to happen at frame 5. I want it to give me kind of a clean slate. And I'm going to right mouse click on frame number 5, and I'm going to tell it to insert a keyframe. So when I do that, now I have basically a clean slate. I'm not drawing on top of frame number 1 where I already created my shapes. Okay, does that make sense on what we did and why we did that? Now, you're also going to have to start thinking about how you plan this sort of stuff out. Some of you, the way you plan these out make it almost impossible for me to help you whenever you run into problems. I'm so OCD whenever I create Flash stuff that every time I do something new, it's on a new layer or I've inserted in a new keyframe. Okay, so that it's easy for me to follow and easy for me to find where different things happen. Okay, so layers and keyframes are just completely the basis of Flash and understanding how to use layers and when and why you put in keyframes. Okay, the other stuff is kind of easy after you get all that figured out. All right, let's work with the pen tool first. All right, the pen tool. We're going to draw this little arrow. And I don't care where you place it on the grid, but we're going to draw ourselves this arrow. Now the trick to the pen tool is basically plotting your point and then clicking and doing your second point. You don't drag it, okay? The pen tool's not really, the brush tool's more of, dragging to draw something. The pen tool is clicking at point 1 to point 2, and then from point 2 to point 3. Okay, so it's all about not really drawing it, but clicking points and then those points attaching to one another. And when you're done, you just double click it at the end point. Okay, so it doesn't try to keep on drawing something with the pen tool. Okay, after you've gotten your arrow drawn in, okay, notice that the property bar over at the side is for the stroke and fill color for your shape. Okay, so you could have set that ahead of time. Okay. If you didn't pick a fill color ahead of time, you're going to have to come down here and actually click the paint bucket tool and then choose your fill color and then go fill in the arrow.
How do you make another frame?
Another frame? Well, there's all kinds of frames at the bottom.
Yeah, I know, and I can't get the frame 5. It won't move.
The bucket? No. Call it. Paul, you watch your mouth.
Right mouse click, insert the frame. That phone wasn't so distracting.
You may have noticed I haven't touched my phone yet.
I know. Good job.
It's because I don't have it.
Oh my gosh. Oh my job. Is there any fault in yours?
What are you drawing here,
Miss Fox, am I doing it right?
No.
Funny.
LOL.
All right, everybody get the arrow drawn in and filled?
I didn't yet because I can't figure this out.
What?
Yours is like a whole nother blank thing.
Right. So on the new layer that you inserted in, you click on frame 5 and you insert in a keyframe. So you right mouse click on frame 5, frame 4, insert keyframe.
Okay.
Okay. And then use your pen tool.
This thing.
Just like a little, yep. And you click. You don't draw, like draw and drag. You click point 1 and then you click point 2 and it makes a line. And then you click point 3 and it makes a line from point 2 to 3. Okay. All right, any other problems with pen tool?
Yeah, I can't draw it.
Yeah, that
My
might
arrow's not working out. That's what I was able to make.
There you go. Well,
now
you don't have to be perfect the first time.
Miss Fox.
Are you clicking?
My arrow is just too slow.
Can I show you something?
Paintball. Can I just make my arrow really big?
Sure. Okay, so we got 2 squares. Make it like again. That makes- And we go up 1 square. And we click again. Okay? So just count your squares and then click.
Miss Fox, I'm still
Okay, you need to insert in a keyframe. So right mouse click, insert keyframe. Okay? And then, oh, well, because you made all this.
You just want to stand up.
It's Flash.
Web design?
It's Flash class.
Web design?
Show me a card trick, please.
Which one?
Something that's going on.
You got a new card.
Yeah, I know. I've had these for a while, I just haven't really bought them out.
Does he do a magic?
Where's my stupid arrow?
But it's not hard stuff.
Right here.
I can just like, yeah, water bottle, throw it into the water bottle. Like a pen.
Oh, really?
Water bottle.
Oh, that's art. Exactly.
Just
What?
Oh, I did not remember. Dude, why is your tongue so long?
I don't know what you've done.
Oh,
Why did you do that?
That one's new.
You want some more?
I have to. I forgot about it.
What's that?
I don't know what all you put in there. Because you should just be able to go out to frame 5, insert a keyframe on that layer, right on the.
Wow.
Insert keyframe. Yeah, just a regular keyframe. Insert keyframe.
Wow.
Yeah. I have no idea what it looks, so it's kind of difficult for me, like. You have the whole flag thing going, so I don't know if that messed something up, like within your frame sequence.
I did have a little flag there.
Yeah.
Look, mine's rainbow.
Perfect. All right, let's take a look at the pencil tool. So let's move on to page 2-11. Are we a distraction? All right, so with the pencil tool, okay, we're going to pick up on page 2-11. A couple things that happen whenever you select the pencil tool. You've got the stroke color and the style. You can also adjust the width, okay, as well. So if you want to make a really heavy line, you can do that. What I want you to notice, and I'm sorry it's chopped off on mine, but if you guys go to the very bottom of your toolbar, there's an S right now with like a little pull down menu, and it says pencil mode. Now, if you choose smooth, when you're using the pencil, it tries to smooth out kind of like the curves, so it's not so jagged whenever you're drawing this in, because let's face it, we don't have a stylus, we're using a mouse. It makes it more difficult to try to draw in a shape. I know, beautiful, isn't it?
I'm gonna draw Camden's sister again.
All right, so mine's pretty rough looking. If I use my selection tool and I select all of what I just drew in, I have a couple more tools down here at the bottom. I have a smooth tool and I have a straighten tool. Okay, let's, in this first example, use the smooth tool. And I can click this smooth tool until I get the effect that I want. So what it's trying to do is anything that's kind of more of a point, it's trying to give it a little more of a curvature look to it and trying to smooth it out. Okay, now let's do kind of the same thing again. And this time, I'm going to use the straighten tool instead.
What's the straighten tool? I don't know what that is.
It's right underneath the smooth tool
What's this?
that you just, at the bottom of your... Okay, so this is going to try to straighten out the line as much as it can. Straighten and smooth, straighten. Okay.
Where is it?
When I'm drawing pentagrams with it.
All right, so after you draw it in, do you have Jolly Ranchers here? Do you save any for anybody else?
No.
I didn't know I bought them just for Tristan. Tristan, you,
Whoa!
I guess so. Now, did you see what I did?
Yeah, I got
The
two
arrow
of them.
tool, and I
Oh, buddy,
did
you
this,
won't
and now
do
here's
it.
smooth and here's
Oh,
straight. Okay.
Good stuff. We're gonna get the water in here.
What?
Now you get kind of the same effect if you use the brush tool as well, where you can try to straighten it out.
That'd be so much fun if you're annoying. Oh, should be.
So if I use the brush tool, okay, I can select it after I draw it, and I still have straight and smooth. So you can see it gives it a little different effect when it's the brush tool.
Wanna see something nasty?
No.
Here, I'll just show you, look.
Hey, son.
Look.
Look how bruised it is.
Oh my gosh.
What?
My finger,
From what?
playing basketball.
When? Yesterday. Where? Yeah.
Yes.
How do you get the American flag? Don't worry about it. You're gonna find out. It's called the Declaration. Ask Miss Fox. She knows all that. American flags. I found rainbow, but American flags a lot.
Okay, so everybody find the smooth and straighten tool. Get it to work on both your pencil and your brush. We all good with that? All right, now the other reason why we wanted to open this file, because already preloaded in this file was a little graphic of the U.S. flag. So I'm going to show you some things you can do with a graphic that you already have in your library. So over here on the property bar, you have the property tab, and then you have a library tab. Okay, we have an image in here called flag. You can add images to your library, okay, that you can use in different ways. Okay, whenever you're trying to draw objects on your timeline here. The first thing I'm going to do is insert in another layer, and I'm just going to call it flag since we're dealing with the U.S. flag. And then I'm going to go out to frame number 10 on the flag layer, and I'm going to insert a keyframe. So I get back to I go to the next blank section here. All right. When I click the little arrow in the corner of my brush tool, I have a spray brush tool. So let's click on the spray brush. When I do, the property bar changes. I have a button here because right now it says there's no symbol set for the spray, because you can do a color or you can do a symbol, which would be a graphic. I'm going to click the edit button. The one symbol that I already have preloaded into this file, of course, is the flag. So I'm going to select it and
There are no symbols.
click OK. Did you open the file that I told you to open, the FL?
I think so.
FLA or the FL2_1 should be in there.
Yeah, I did. It's FL21.
All right, now with my spray brush, okay, I can use it to drag and draw. The spray can is under the brush. So if you click on the brush tool, I drew mine way too big. You've got your spray can. So Duffy, you don't have
I figured out why.
the flag?
I figured out
You
why.
got it?
Yeah, because I did it on an untitled one.
Oh, okay.
How do you add your There you go. Do you read what that says?
Gosh. Put it on the thing.
To add one, you have at the bottom, you have tools at the bottom where you can add a new symbol. So you tell it new symbol and you can add in whatever graphics that you want. Okay, that you can use.
Okay, but how do I make it spread?
Click and drag. So you use your spray brush tool, which is under right there. And then you just start like you're holding down.
USA. USA.
All right. Now, if you want it to work with the flag, you gotta go back to properties.
Oh no.
You gotta go to edit, and you gotta choose the flag.
Thanks.
Mhm. Okay, so you can use either a graphic, okay, or just a color with the spray brush tool. If you wanted to add another graphic to use at the bottom of the library panel, there's the first button says new symbol. You would click on new symbol and you would create your new symbol and add it there. Okay,
I like to see in this box.
Oh my god. America's so
I can tell.
Man, how dare you like stuff?
All right, any questions or problems on how that works?
No. No, mine doesn't work right.
Let me see.
I think this does it for me right here. I made the scale with the height real small. Oh,
Back here. I gotta show you something.
oh yeah. Make this into a symbol, but it won't let me.
Yeah.
What is it?
Yeah.
It would know you'd be too powerful. Invite me to your house.
It's like this one. You remember the one that I showed you in Dreamweaver?
Or what about the guy that's in the water? He's like, you know, it's like the guy that looks like The Rock, but not at all.
Okay, let's go ahead and just save this file. This is probably a good place to stop because I don't want to get just a couple steps into the next thing. We'll save that for tomorrow.
Boom. Look at that. Oh, that's good. I don't want it to say USA though.
Moto likes
Okay.
Nolan.
Of course, my friend.
Uh-oh.
Sound like a Soviet would say. Who?
Thanks.
I think Cameron's house flag is the best.
Yeah.